This is Media Philosophy, exploring the deeper side of American Dad, more specifically Roger and Klaus, them separately, their relationships together. Out of all the characters in American Dad, these two mirror each other the most interestingly, because they share a lot of similar traits, but are complete opposites in a lot of extreme ways. While all the family is mean to Klaus, there is a special level of meanness that Roger engages in. That's interesting because, again, they share just so many similar qualities. But there is and that similar quality is how fake both of them are. With Roger, it's obvious. He has all his personas. I mean, he has multiple episodes of him complaining about nothing being real, that his accomplishments mean nothing. And that's because it kind of is true. Roger himself is pretty lazy, is pretty boring, he's a drug addict, whatever. His personas may do incredible feats or claim to do incredible feats, but Roger himself, not that impressive. And then we have Klaus, who did lead a really interesting life. He was an Olympic skier, and he just had a lot of other past things happen to him. I can't remember them at this moment. But throughout the show, there'll be bits and pieces of his history that make him sound a little bit cooler. But now that he's a fish, there'll be many times when he just goes off on a lot of lies, a lot of tangents. And it's just really funny how the family will tolerate Roger's ridiculousness and just completely shut Klaus down. Not even humor Klaus. It really goes to show how people treat others differently, even if they do the same stuff. And there's even some cases where Klaus has way better skills than Roger, yet the family still supports Roger. Probably the most famous episode being the whole Dr. Penguin episode, where Roger and Dr. Penguin are giving the family just terrible advice, while Klaus actually has sound advice, but no one listens to him because he's a fish. But even while a fish, Klaus does go out and try to do stuff that is real. He is still, a person, unlike Roger, who's an alien who has powers and whatnot. He still wants those connections and whatnot. And it's kind of cool that he does find those connections. I would say out of all the family members, maybe just kind of like, how he's the Meg Smith of the family. Out of all the family members, just like Meg, he has to become the most well-rounded, just to survive, just to kind of get by. And, he's got his boy Jurgen. He's got Klaus's boys down in Florida. He has an on-again, off-again relationship with Shoshana. Shoshana makes me laugh. So funny. Oh, my God. Hannah? That episode. I love American Dad so much. But the point is, Klaus actually does try. And there was the whole episode where Klaus takes over the town because nobody respects him, so he puts on a guise of trying to better himself, and everybody falls for it except for Francine. I mean, again, he's just trying to struggle to survive. He actually has to do stuff. But I think it's also interesting to see how Klaus and Roger have changed over time. American Dad is so great because almost every single character, I would say every single character, maybe except Steve, has had some pretty radical changes throughout the, 19 seasons now, 20 seasons now. And with Roger, he was just kind of a prop-ish, at the beginning. It wasn't until they got him into those suits and whatnot, into the disguises, that he really started coming out of the shell. I love how they started to retcon that, though, and say that was something he always did from the beginning, even though in, season 2, it was when he first put on that Jamaican outfit or whatever. But whatever, I'm not one of those people that really care, especially in a show like American Dad, if the writers need to tweak the past again. I think it's for the best. But then there's Klaus, and he has a really interesting change in the whole societal scope of everything, because one of his big shticks at the beginning of the show was he was sort of that one of those perverted characters that were kind of present, I would say, in earlier sitcoms of the 90s, early 2000s, whatever, basically all the way up until the Me Too movement. I would say that this type of character was somewhat common in TV shows, the pervert, but the pervert who was doing it to get laughs. And what I mean by that is the show presents Klaus's perversion towards Francine as a joke. And obviously in 2025, we can kind of see how that doesn't fly anymore. But what's cool about Klaus is, unlike other characters who have this trait, most notably someone like Quagmire from Family Guy, unlike someone like Quagmire, who's completely now devoid of any sort of personality or comedic angle, Klaus retained his pervertedness. I mean, there's many episodes where it does show his sort of desperation towards women, but that's the key. Instead of presenting Klaus as either being suave or people laughing with him or whatever, the whole joke is how pathetic he is. And that's why it still works. The whole Klaus of Cards bit or whatever on that same episode where he tries to take over the town is funny because it's a real situation. I don't think we should get rid of the whole creepy guy character trope, whatever, because this is a real scenario that women deal with all the time and are going to deal with. And just because we stop putting him in TV shows doesn't mean he's not going to still exist in the real world. But they keep it in American Dad by making Klaus just so pathetic still when he engages in these sort of, endeavors, acts, whatever. Opposed to Quagmire, which was supposed to be like a ladies' man. He was supposed to be suave. He was supposed to take the perversion to the next level. So you can't really make Quagmire the butt of the joke the same way someone like Klaus can be, because Quagmire knows how to talk to women. It would be really strange if they just pulled a 180. I mean, unless they acknowledge the new climate of, pickup artists and whatnot that they have to navigate, unless that's the kind of lore reason they bring into it. And, sure, I might have just said I don't really care about the lore in TV shows, especially comedies. I don't, but I do think there is a character continuity that is important. It's a big difference between changing the fact that Roger may have always been walking amongst humans using disguises to, or making it that from, that he discovered it while trying to go to community college or whatever. And that's okay. That's just a retcon to make the story a little bit better. Versus, let's completely change, how how the world views this character or how this character interacts with the world. That doesn't hold up as much. That's a big change in the character versus changing a small detail in the story. But again, this was supposed to be about Klaus and Roger of a comparison. And again, it's just so funny that someone as fake as Roger can dog on someone who's so desperate as Klaus. And I think that's one of the most endearing things about Klaus is he's just so sad, and I don't know if people can just see themselves in them. I don't know. But it just seems like he does really try, and I think a lot of people can put themselves in that shoe of just wanting to be accepted and wanting to belong. And it's just so sad that the people who try the hardest, which is what it seems like Klaus does, it seems like the people who try the hardest to please others get treated the worst. And it's just really fun to watch Klaus just really change, again, from that perverted fish to someone who's just desperately trying to be with other people. And you can really see this journey of Klaus throughout this series, of him learning just how to be the hype man and whatnot, and just how to go along with other people. He's always going to be excited for whatever anybody else has going on. And I think that's just so funny that his desperation, his wanting to belong, can sometimes be what pushes a character to make a terrible choice. Because again, he's so blinded by the opportunity to be a part of something, he doesn't want to lose that chance. So he says push the pedal to the metal, all gas, no brakes, let's go. And when the character is as desperate as wanting to listen to Klaus or bond with Klaus, they're at the lowest that they're actually trying to connect with Klaus, they're going to be receptive to that message. But again, it really is sad because it does seem like Klaus does have a lot of talents and skills that just aren't respected because he is a man trapped in a fish's body. So sad. versus Roger, who again is just all gags, all silliness, just completely lets the family down time and time again. But again, Martin Sugar or all the other charming personas that Roger has, again, if you just know how to make people laugh, if you know how to get people on your side, you can treat them so terribly. You can let them down time and time again, and they will come flocking back to you. It's honestly kind of a good message for people to hear. As much as we would love to be judged by the merit of our character, people are not that perceptive. People are not going to put that much thought into you. It's just basically how do they perceive you moment to moment. And that's what Roger proves. And I think this combination of fakeness of Roger and genuineness of Klaus, I think this combination, this mirroring, is a lot more interesting than, I would say, the spiritual mirroring of Brian and Stewie and Family Guy. I would say one complaint that people have when it comes to like Family Guy and American Dad on the surface is it seems that it looks like they're two similar shows. And I would say in this case that if you're going to make that argument, Brian and Stewie, or I would say Klaus and Roger sort of act as the stand-in for Brian and Stewie. I would say that Klaus is more Brian and Stewie is more Roger, just due to the ridiculousness that they get into, that Stewie can get into and that Roger can get into. But I just don't find that those characters are as interesting, as developed, as three-dimensional as Roger and Klaus. It's hard to talk about Roger without using his other personas, because I would say that his personas aren't Roger. So you'd have to do a whole separate video on his separate personas and how they react. As each separate persona, as Roger has made clear, has their own backstory, their own beliefs. I mean, there's been multiple instances of characters, personas taking over and having a mind of their own. There's Ricky Spanish. There was Sydney Huff. There was that one that was dating Dick. And Roger loved someone like Lacey Crinklehole so much that Haley was able to manipulate him. So I'm just saying there's a lot of overlap, though, between like Roger and their personas, I guess, in the sense that they can kind of take over. But I would say that a persona is their own, in a sense, living, breathing person, and that makes Roger so great. But it's really, again, hard to talk about Roger as a character himself. And again, that's one of his big complaints that he would make on himself, is he doesn't know who he is. He's like a blank slate, which can probably be great on a writer's side. But again, everything he does is so fake. Anything that comes out of Roger's mouth is most likely a lie. Anything that sounds like he's trying to convince you of something is totally a lie. But with Klaus, if it was pre his body being transformed, it might actually happen. Post-body transplant, if it's anything that makes him look like a hero, it's probably fake. All of his stories are just really sad. And I'm really glad that Klaus still puts himself out there. Someone who gets just completely dragged through the mud day in, day out, doesn't give up. Doesn't give up on love, doesn't give up on relationships, doesn't give up on his family. I mean, he is the glue that holds them together. It's just, I don't know, again, if anybody should have to put themselves in that position to please other people, and they really shouldn't. But just as a level of just perseverance, I love characters like Klaus because they don't give up in the face of adversity. They cry, they get knocked down, they hurt, but they get back up and they get back out there. And again, that's just really important. He grows, he learns, he tries to better himself, and it rarely pays off, but hey, in a Seth MacFarlane cartoon, you gotta have a lightning rod. This is Media Philosophy, exploring the deeper side of entertainment.